It's Way Up with Angela Yee. I'm Angela Yee, and Jasmine Brand is here with me.
Yes, I'm here.
And today we have a big deal. And you know it's a big deal because they done swept the building a couple of days in advance.
Serious.
Michael S. Regan, the EPA administrator, is here with us, Environmental Protection Agency. So for people who are listening, right, what exactly is your responsibility?
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And it's a huge responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
President Biden appointed me as the administrator of the United States Environmental Protection Agency. So what we do is we protect drinking water, air quality, and we're at the tip of the spear as we fight this climate crisis.
Right.
So everything we do is protecting public health and the environment. So it's a huge, huge responsibility.
That's everything that we need to live.
And to be clear, it is
Everything.
a crisis right now. That we're in, but I want to make sure we always talk about solutions too, and what the average person can do, because sometimes people feel like, well, it's not my fault, there's nothing I could really do about it as long as I'm gonna be alive or whatever. People have to think about people in other parts of the world. They have to think about environmental justice. They have to think about future generations and how this will affect those times. I saw this is like the hottest year on record, and they said even June and July and October is on record to be like the hottest month ever.
It's serious.
For October.
Yeah, it's very serious. And for those who don't really want to think about 50 years from now or the science, when you look outside your window and you see these hurricanes, these floods, these wildfires, this extreme heat, it's terrible in terms of the impact to especially our communities. But then you think about what it exacerbates. When it's hot outside in these urban areas, our kids with asthma, these respiratory illnesses, the stress, our elderly, it has a disproportionate impact on our communities, our Black and brown and indigenous communities. And so the environmental justice piece is just so critical, so important. And I'm proud to say that President Biden is the first president to utter the words environmental justice during a State of the Union address. That shows you how much of a priority it is for this administration.
So how does that feel when people are bashing President Biden all the time? Because I always hear people be like, he didn't do anything for us, or, what has happened for Black people since President Biden has been in office? And we talk about environmental justice, environmental racism. You even think about clean drinking water. We think of that as something that should be a right for what we have, but that's not necessarily the case in a lot of places.
It's not. And, I think that, listen, the president has done an enormous amount for this country in just 3 years. It's now time for us to tell that story. Thanks to the president's leadership, my agency has $3 billion solely focused on environmental justice. Just today, we are announcing $128 million going to 186 communities, right, who are struggling with lack of access to clean drinking water, pollution in their neighborhoods, even young organizations that just want to learn more about sustainability. We're giving grants out to help rebuild our communities. And so I'm really excited about what the president has done. Now it's time for us to talk about it, as you said, in a way that people in our communities understand what it means for them.
Right, and I see that you guys have set up 17 technical assistance centers, too, across the nation. So how can people find where these centers are so that they make sure that their community can also benefit from this program?
Listen, they can go to EPA.gov. This is a priority for us, so it's on our website. And by the way, $3 billion is a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is.
So we took about $200 million and
which is also a lot of money.
To be clear.
It's a lot of money. And instead of us being paternalistic and saying we know who should get this $3 billion, we invested in 17 centers all across the country made up of communities, academic institutions. They are going into our neighborhoods, building capacity so that these local organizations can apply and be competitive for this $3 billion. And I keep saying $3 billion with a B.
Yeah.
That's a
Don't
lot
play.
of money.
And I want to ask you personally, what made you so passionate about this work?
Well, I grew up in the South, and I grew up hunting and fishing with my dad and my granddad. But I also, in my younger years, had a lot of asthmatic symptoms. So on hot days, a lot of pollution, I was stuck in the house. They were out doing what they did. And so that sort of inability to join them and engage in culture and learn from my grandparents and my parents really had me at an early age focused on understanding that connection between pollution, our environment, and our health. And so growing up, I just was focused on that. I went to North Carolina A&T State University, the largest black university
I went to Morgan State University.
in the
It's
country.
not A&T,
Talk
but
about it.
But, our HBCUs just prepare us so well. And so that connection, getting an internship at EPA, it really set the course for my career.
And when people also have to understand, like we were talking about this, the wildfires in Canada, how that affected our air here. Like that moved over here. Everybody was outside wearing a mask. I couldn't breathe right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you don't even have asthma, and you couldn't breathe well. Yeah. And you were having issues, and we all had to wear masks outside. It was kind of bizarre.
And if you think about the wildfires in California, you think about all of those things that can happen. Some people will tell you that climate change doesn't exist and there's no issues and that we don't need to be concerned about it. What do you say to people like that who are like, no, there's nothing going on here. We don't have any issues. And
listen, I say it's abnormal in New York to experience the level of smoke you all experienced from wildfires and fires in Canada.
It's never happened in my life.
The flooding in the metro system, the people that died from flooding, these are times of climate crisis. Now, when I talk to our young people and we talk about it as climate anxiety, to the point you all were making earlier, we talk about it from a solutions orientation lens. So this crisis hasn't gone too far. And I think as the government invests in these solutions, part of this $3 billion is making sure that our communities who are on the front lines are prepared for this transition.
Yeah, even if you think about it, even like insurance for your home. A lot of times insurance can be extremely high depending on where you live. Yeah. And there's no protections against the flooding, and you have to get flood insurance separately, and that can be extremely expensive. And so if you want to live in a coastal area, that's not possible for certain people because they can't even afford it to get the insurance.
That's right.
And so we don't even think about these little small things that is affected by the environment and why that can be really racist, here in the United States.
If I'm a black or brown person, I am a black or brown person. I'm a black person. But if I'm a black woman, let's say if I was in an impoverished area, I didn't have that much money, what can I do to protect myself and my family from things like this?
I think the first thing is understanding that there is a transition happening and that our communities are experiencing it. And so we are trying to empower local organizations, local leaders, with the type of information to help protect our families.
Right.
Whether it's making sure that our homes have appropriate air conditioning for these heat waves we're seeing, whether we're looking at, as the country starts to think about electric vehicles, do we have charging stations in our communities? I think if you are in our communities, you're thinking about these environmental impacts, but you're also thinking about, well, what about the jobs? What about the economy? What about our infrastructure? We're trying to invest in all of those three things simultaneously, because we have to address the environmental racism, we have to address the economic disadvantages, and we have to address that our communities on the front lines, they are receiving the brunt of this pollution. And so you can't really solve one of these problems without solving all of these problems. And so I would encourage everybody to reach out to your local. We're partnering with the NAACP, the Urban League, our churches. These are the organizations we want to get the resources, not just the government, but our local community leaders.
Yeah. And I mean, I also think about times when it's cold in the house and you had to turn the oven on.
I definitely did that.
And leave the oven. You know how dangerous that
Very.
is?
Yeah. Yes.
And I was reading that at some point we might not have gas stoves and ovens anymore, and that we should be getting electric, because I'm working on my house and I'm doing the kitchen. And so I was doing my research, and it was like, get an electric stove, get an electric oven, because if you don't have the right amount of circulation in the house too, it can be dangerous, to even breathe that air inside the house. But there's a lot of things that you end up doing just because you're trying to stay warm or survive.
That's right. And I think we have to have solutions for everyday Americans. And I believe that there should be a balance in what we can do as government and what we all can do in terms of personal choice. And so we're trying to balance those things. And so, when you think about gas stoves, some people automatically go to, oh, this is trying to solve the climate crisis. But it's actually doing what you just said, which is reducing those emissions that might be occurring in some of our homes that aren't well vented. Or if you're building a home, taking that into consideration so that you're not overly exposed to some of these toxic fumes that come from fossil fuels.
Right.
I think we have to really try to bring this down to the basic human level.
Yeah.
That while this is about the environment, this is about humanity.
Right.
This is about public health, but it's also about a $1 trillion transition. You know, this is a $1 trillion economy when you think about energy and you think about new technologies. And so as we make this $1 trillion transition, our communities need to be competitive from an educational standpoint, infrastructure standpoint. The future for our children, they should have a part in seeing this through.
Right. And then even, I was going to say, just thinking about also the drinking water issues that we've been having. Like we see Flint, Michigan, the fact that they for so long have had to deal with contaminated water. And that it is a process though, right? But certain things are like an emergency. And I feel like if that was another area, it wouldn't have taken that long for that problem to get fixed.
We know the data is there.
Yeah.
That because of institutional racism, because of redlining, because of all these things that we know that exist in history, we're seeing communities disproportionately impacted. There should never be a Flint, Michigan.
Right.
In 2021, I started this Journey to Justice tour because people actually thought Flint was a one-off or don't believe lots of communities are on the cusp of that.
Newark had that issue, I remember.
That's crazy.
Lots of communities. I actually visited elementary school in Jackson, Mississippi. My son's 9, so I went to talk to some of his colleagues about climate change, environment.
His 9-year-old colleagues. I love it.
And showed up to the school. School is shut down, but there are porta potties lined up all along the school. I thought that was for construction, but those were for the children because the water pressure in that school was so low. Now, this is during COVID.
That's crazy.
So can you imagine sending your children to school? They can't wash their hands.
Oh, my God.
They can't use
awful.
the toilet
That's
inside.
so dangerous.
This is 2021
And they're kids.
in Mississippi. This is kids. So this is happening all across the country.
Yeah.
I've spent time in Louisiana, Cancer Alley, Texas. I was just in Alaska and visiting with our indigenous brothers and sisters, Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
This is happening in 2023. So I'm passionate about making sure that people understand President Biden has created, along with Congress, billions of dollars to begin solving some of these solutions. We can't wait for states and local governments to do it. We have to arm our local community leaders with some resources.
All right, so for everybody who's listening and they're like, okay, I need to make sure that I take care of myself and my family. I'm thinking about my future generations, my grandchildren, who's going to come after, my great-great-grandchildren. Yes. We want to make sure that they actually are able to survive and thrive, aside from when we're not here anymore. So what are some steps that people can take that are tangible things that are actually going to improve their neighborhoods
I
and
think
the environment?
The first thing we all should do is just make sure that we're arming ourselves with information. When we think about solutions, there is not a one-size-fit-all. I think communities in the Bronx are dealing with something completely different than communities in Houston. And so I think we need to educate ourselves on how access to clean air and clean water actually benefits our communities and benefits those future generations. So just stay involved. Who our leaders are
that
really matters. I think just exercising that voice and putting your voice and your actions towards people who are actually delivering for your communities. We can't fall for the okey doke on the rhetoric. We really have to look at where the results are. And as the first black man to run EPA and to be armed with billions of dollars, I can say we would not be here. I would not have this job if we didn't have this current Biden-Harris administration.
Can you just talk about really quick, and then you can continue with how big of a deal that is?
Number one, it's a blessing, right? I think God has really blessed me to be on a path to serve, and that's what I really enjoy is the public service aspect. But, every morning I wake up, I'm kissing a little black boy on the forehead. I'm leaving. I understand I'm a black man leading this agency.
Yep.
And so it's an enormous amount of pressure because I want to get it right. And I want to be sure that we are represented in all of these discussions. And so while it's an honor, I'm not resting on my laurels.
Of course you're not.
I'm moving forward every day.
And you said you started as an intern at EPA?
I did.
Okay.
I interned at EPA and worked there for about 6 years, and then I left.
Okay.
And came back under the Biden administration.
Okay.
The power of internships.
Yep. I wanted to bring that
out there.
Bring that up.
Yeah, just being able to be in a space that you're in and how much that can affect you. Now, let's talk about electric cars.
Yeah.
You know, because I feel like I want to get an electric car, but like you said, to have the charging stations and access to that.
Yeah, and you're in New York too, so what does that look like for people that are in bigger cities, you know, to have access to be able to charge the car?
Is this all part of the funding too? Or like, tell us, with this $3 billion, what is some of this money going toward?
Well, so let me start by saying, I think the last Super Bowl we all watched, you saw GM, Chrysler, Stellantis, you saw all these people running these $1 million ads talking about electric vehicles.
Right.
So there are some that are trying to say the government is forcing this. This is where the market is going. So what the president has really focused on is making sure that we have the infrastructure and the places to support where the market is going. DOT and DOE are working on a program, I think, to try to put something like 500,000 charging stations all across the country to reduce that range anxiety that you're talking about. I think Elon Musk and Tesla are opening up their charging stations. So the government and the private sector are investing in the infrastructure so that we can see these cars
Sounds like
everywhere.
some jobs available for people too.
Right.
If you want to know how to build charging stations and the equipment that's needed for that.
Tons of jobs. And if those investments don't put the charging stations in our respective neighborhoods, part of this $3 billion looks at projects to do just that.
Okay.
By the way, projects that would put the charging stations in our neighborhoods, but also trainings, education, whether it's a charging station or a solar panel that you want in your church, right? These environmental justice grant dollars can infuse into those ideas and those people in those communities.
I definitely have solar panels on my house that I'm installing.
Your new house?
Yeah, when everything is done. So I have those already. But there's a lot of tax breaks also in order to be able to have that. So, you know, that's a positive thing as well.
It is.
Now, Administrator Regan, what do you say when people are like, well, this is taking jobs away from blue-collar workers and people who, say, work in the coal mines? We always hear these stories about that, even though that's a very dangerous occupation to have. Yeah. But I've seen that narrative also. How do you respond to that?
I think part of it is, this administration is focused on bringing manufacturing back to the United States. And so what you're looking at is an opportunity for a skills transfer from one kind of employment during a certain time in history to the future that doesn't leave anyone behind. So whether you're a blue-collar worker or a white-collar worker, I think that there are opportunities. Listen, what I tell young people, and I spend a lot of time talking to young people because it is about the future, and every major social movement we've seen in this country has been led by young people. So when you go to college, whether you're an accountant, engineer, or, whether you're going into a trades, this future is inclusive of everyone. There's a transition actually occurring. And we've put resources, programs, educational features in place to be sure that not only do folks understand what this transition looks like, but how to be a part of it. And so I think whether you whether you want to go to college or not, right, a lot of these jobs that are what people used to call green jobs. I don't call them green jobs because I think a job is a job.
Right.
So these jobs are just jobs, and they will be available to folks in this country. And the last thing I'll say on that is this administration and the government wants this country to be globally competitive. So a lot of what's happening cannot happen unless you bring every community along.
Right.
I think Dr. King said that this country cannot be as great as it can be unless the least amongst us are part of the solution. And so that's what we're really focused on.
And this is an international focus, too, because what happens in other countries also affects what happens here when it comes to the environment. So I know that's important, too.
It is. And I've spent a lot of time over the past 3 years with my international counterparts, other ministers of the environment. And, what you see all across the world is the same folks being impacted. Poor people, black or brown people,
It's either the
indigenous
caste system
people.
or it's a racial. Yeah.
That's right. And it's a global problem. This climate issue is a global problem. So we're out holding all these countries' hands, arm in arm, thinking about what we all do together, trying to create that rising tide that lifts all boats.
All right, well, let's talk about it. The $3 billion from the Inflation Reduction Act, and that is going to be advancing environmental justice. One more time, where can people go to get more information so they can also join in this fight against climate change?
People should go to EPA.gov. This is a priority, so you can access it very quickly from our homepage. And there's tons of information about this $3 billion. I will say this. My agency typically is a $13 billion agency per year. Under the Biden-Harris administration, we've got $100 billion solely focused on this transition.
Yeah.
And by law, 40% of that 100 must go to disadvantaged communities. So
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So we're really rolling out the resources and putting our money where our mouth is.
Because when we think about the hottest months on record in June and July, again, who are the people affected? You know, we tell people don't go outside. If you can get air conditioning, stay inside.
Yep.
Some people don't have air conditioning,
right.
and it's also expensive to
That's
have your
right.
air
Yeah.
conditioner on all day.
And we take it for granted. But
Absolutely.
it's very real.
Yeah,
we
it's a
do.
real thing.
Yep.
All right, well, we appreciate you so much for taking time to come through. I know you said you were going to do it. You are a man of your word. All right, I saw you at Essence Fest, and we discussed this, and then your team definitely reached out. So I appreciate you because this is very important, and we want to make sure that people know exactly what's going on. Again, you're prioritizing youth engagement. That is part of the plan.
Yes.
Because like you said, the youth, they're always the ones that lead us.
Yep.
In times like this.
They do. I'm excited to say in about a month or so, we're going to launch the first ever Federal Advisory Council that is occupied solely by youth, 16 to 29.
Oh, nice.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yep. And so we're treating them just like we treat all the experts. We've got experts on children's health. We have experts on environmental finance. Now we're going to have an advisory board solely focused and occupied by youth.
I love that.
Who will sit with me in public meetings. They will offer me advice. I will have to
They'll
take
keep, they
that
keep you in
advice.
touch.
They're going
You're not going to be out of touch
hold
with
my
this
feet to the
TikTok
fire.
dances.
Yeah. Explaining what's going on. We'll have a viral dance.
So that's coming soon.
All right, well, please don't step down anytime soon, okay?
Hey, listen, this is
You're like, wait a minute.
this is a battle here we're engaging in,
Okay.
and I'm committed to the work.
All right. Well, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
We appreciate you for coming through. EPA.gov.
Yes.
Okay, EPA.gov. Check that out. It's Way Up with Angela Yee. EPA Administrator Michael S. Regan.
Way up.